Hello, everyone. Thank you for watching or listening to Movies with Love. This is Dexter season 5. I was actually supposed to record this in October. I was doing a 31-day Halloween thing, and I was going to record one season of Dexter per day for the 31 days. It is right now March 6th, 2025. So I'm a couple months late. I just but yeah, I just haven't had time. Um, so yeah, I'm actually, this season was very interesting. So yeah, I'm going to basically go through the whole season, give a review of the whole season and a lot of the notes, the messages and stuff that I got from each episode. Some have more than others. Some have 5 notes, some have one, some don't have any. So yeah, I'm gonna try and get through this as fast as I can. I haven't had time to. I'm gonna get through this as fast as I can, but I also want to be. What's the word? Tentative, attentive. Right. I want to really, be attentive to the nature of the topic. Um, so this season of Dexter, season 5, is about healing, shattering of one's primal self, and PTSD. So before I really get into the episodes, the notes that I wrote for each episode and the topic of the season and all that, I do want to cover up, go over some stuff that I did not go over in the other 4 seasons that I recorded. I did learn more information, but I had a very hard time going back to edit. For whatever reason, my editing soft app or software on my laptop, it was not working. It was not letting me edit audio for whatever reason. I don't know why. So I did. So I'll go over it quick. So I did talk a little bit about how each character in Dexter actually symbolizes a piece of Dexter of him, and I did go over how the elimination of each of these characters is actually that part of Dexter being eliminated or being killed off within his self, his own psyche. So I talked about, so season 1 was evil, basically Brian. Season 2 was Lila, which was basically lust, addiction, chaos, addiction. I'm sorry, adrenaline junkie. Yes, adrenaline junkie, chaos, things like that. And the third one was Miguel, which was basically overindulgence. Um, what I failed to go over, I believe, in season 3 was the thing about George King, the Skinner character. Skinner, George King represented basically chasing a ghost. The idea of season 3 was chasing a ghost, and Freebo was basically kind of the ghost. Everyone was chasing Freebo. Everyone was trying to find Freebo. Oh, where's Freebo? Where's Freebo? And George King was making up an excuse to kill all these people, saying, "I'm looking for Freebo." And when he didn't get his answer, then he went ahead and killed everybody. At some point, whoever he wanted to, and he found an excuse to do it. At some point, someone told, I think it was Dexter who told the Skinner, "Hey, you and I both know that Freebo's dead. You already know that he's not alive." I don't know if it was Dexter who told him that. I cannot remember right now. I apologize. Um, but yeah, at the very end, Dexter facing George King was Dexter facing that part of himself that was constantly chasing a ghost, chasing a false reality, chasing this idea that ultimately wasn't real, or chasing this idea that wasn't alive. And when Dexter had his conversation with James Remar, Harry, um, Harry's like, "Hey, you have a son now. You want to see him come into the world, right?" Dexter's like, yes, I never wanted anything more in my life. And now Dexter understood that the life that he created was no longer a fake life. It was real. Dexter was no longer chasing a ghost of wanting a normal life. He got it now. And having a family, having a baby, having kids, now that it became a reality within his life and his mind, then he learned how to put away that part of himself that was constantly chasing a ghost of having a normal life, and that was George King's physical representation, physically represented by George King. I feel like there's a piece of detail that I'm missing about that also, but I will have to continue, unfortunately, because I have a lot of notes to get through. Um, Season 4, we had the death of a major character. This character actually represents innocence within Dexter. So the first main character we lost was Dokes, which kind of meant Dex suspicion of Dexter or Dexter getting caught, and mainly that character dying off was that the thought of Dexter or the concept of Dexter getting caught, basic or exposed, is basically killed off that idea. So then when we get into season 4, the next major character that we lose is actually a representation of Dexter's internalized innocence, and that was Rita. So now in this season, we have last season, season 4, we have Rita being killed off, but um Trinity. So what I did not talk about in the previous seasons, I don't know if I will talk about it in future seasons as I go through these reviews, but there was new knowledge that came to me about Dexter's first 9 seasons or first couple seasons actually revolving around the concept or the idea of the 7 layers of hell from Dante's an Inferno story. Um, so I there was some weird things about the show that I just couldn't put my finger that this always kind of was there. I couldn't quite put my finger on it. And then once I learned about the layers of hell, and then I noticed that every season actually followed the same circle, each circle in the exact order. So I guess I will come back to this because there's a reference in season 6 that does come back in the first season. The reference from season 1 that goes into 6. So I will talk about that when I do season 6 review. Um, if I get to it. so yeah. So I'm not. I just I'll go. I'll briefly go over it. But basically, the first layer was limbo, and the second layer was lust. Uh, the first layer of limbo, you really see that in Brian's character, especially after he dies, and his ghost comes back multiple times throughout the show, throughout the series. Season 2 was the layer of lust, which we see that very strongly in Lila's character. Season 3 was about gluttony and the overindulgence of things, and you always see Miguel talking about, "Yo, we got to go throw this on the grill. We have to do that on the grill." And whenever Miguel got a hold of something new, he was like a shark and just had to consume as much of it as he possibly could, and that overconsumption just overall became his undoing. Um, but yeah, each character also kind of died similar to the punishment of each layer. Season, if you actually um, go into that, but season 4, the fourth circle was about greed, I believe. Yes, greed. And so Dexter was very greedy about, what he did with Trinity and everything. And that greed is ultimately what caused, everyone's downfall and everything like that. So yeah, Dexter's greediness is kind of what destroyed his innocence in a way. This season, season five, and also the fifth layer is the anger. Is the Yeah, the layer of anger. Season Well, when I get to season seven, I'll talk about that. But yeah, this season is about anger. This is the fifth circle, which is, yeah, anger. Um, so yeah, now with that being said, my 11-minute intro. Dexter's just lost his innocence. He just lost um, something that was strong, that strongly kept him a good person, that strongly kept him morally right. So now that Dexter's lost that part of himself, this season goes into how to find that piece of us when it's gone. Um, Harrison represents Dexter's light. So it's not so much that, Dexter's completely, hopeless as a character, with Harrison still being Dexter's light. Um, light and innocence, strangely, from the formula of the show, are two different things. So just because I almost dropped everything. So just because one has felt like they've lost their innocence or lost innocence, it doesn't entirely mean that they've lost the light within themselves. So, yeah. Let me unpack some baggage for a second. Okay, I gotta watch my recording and make sure it stays recording. All right, now. Sorry, some of my pages fell out, so it's hard for me to stop the rattling. All right, I guess I'll start with episode one now. So, this season, the topic of this season, is about healing and the shattering of one's primal self and PTSD. All right, so episode one, what I learned from it, what I wrote down, not knowing what's going on around you, and my pen faded, so it's hard for me to kind of read the rest, these first few notes. But yes, whenever PTSD happens, you see this in Dexter when, he gets out of his house and he just doesn't really know what's going on, and he doesn't know that the cops are around him, and they're like, "Sir, we gotta take the baby." And yeah, when trauma happens, you don't really know what goes on around you. When I had my minor car accident a couple years ago, I hit the car, and then I remember being parked. Um, I remember being right there where the accident happened, and I was outside of the car, and I was on the little island of the midsection of the intersection or whatever. I was just on the middle divider or whatever. So the car wasn't my car. The car I was driving was on the curve, and I was standing on the curve, basically on the island of the curve, and I was trying to figure out what was going on. And I had cars and a truck behind me that were looking at me, giving me these weird looks, and I remember waving to them, like, "Oh, sorry," and then all of a sudden I hop back in the car, then I black out, and then I'm in the parking lot of a shopping mall. And it took me a while to understand what was going on around me, what had happened, and I made some phone calls, and I remember the first person I called, which was very weird. It's strange of all the people, my primal instinct was to call these particular people. Um, it took me a few minutes to remember everyone that was in my life. I only remembered maybe four people, maybe five, three to five people, maybe about four people. But there were the only four people that I remembered in my life. And as the minutes kept passing by, I started remembering more and more people that were in my life, from family members, from relatives to friends. But for the first few minutes, I didn't remember anybody. I just remember four people, and I was actually shocked to think that most of those people, the four people that I remembered, weren't even my family members. They weren't even my primal family members. So that was something. So yeah, that's my story on that. You know, and yeah, second note was being unresponsive. And yeah, gotta let your mind and your soul, your body, you gotta let everything catch up. Something opens up inside of you on a different level when you go through trauma or PTSD. So a lot of times you won't be responsive. Time slows down. Everything sounds different. Your senses are just altered. You and yeah, you just want to sometimes hold on or clench whatever or whoever is around you. You just don't want to let them go. You have a dog, you have a person, someone you love, and they pass away in your arms. You just hug, and you just don't want to let that person go. Or even if that person is alive and you've been through trauma, you just want to hug that person and hide inside of them. Strange way of, strange use of words. Um, yeah, sometimes going through PTSD also, you can have a sense of guilt that follows you around. Sometimes even guilt of being alive. That's a thing that I've heard of. I've never quite been through that before, so I can't speak too much on it. But just be careful about letting guilt consume you, because feeling too guilty about something lets makes your mind it makes your mind race. Sorry, it makes your mind race, and you start thinking things that you shouldn't, that weren't real. You start wondering, oh, what if I did this, what if I did that, this could have been different, that could have been different. And you just gotta not let that guilt consume you, and try to make things seem like it was more your fault than than it, when it actually was. Well, it wasn't your fault. Don't overthink and let that guilt tell you that it was. Maybe you had some part or something, but that small little part is should not fully consume you. If you were just, even if you just don't let it. Even if you weren't a part of it, if you didn't do it, if you just don't let it consume you. And yeah, the grieving process is very important. One of my quotes actually was recently was a quote that I made. It was something like, I wrote it down. It was a broken heart does not grieve, and an ungrieved heart does not release. Something along those lines. That wasn't the quote exactly, but it was something like that. And what that meant was, if you don't allow yourself to grieve, then there is no way for your heart to come back together. There's no way to really release a lot of the pain that is stuck inside of you, a lot of the shadows that are inside of you from a situation, not just from death, but from a bad situation. Grief is very, very important when it comes to moving on, because grief can't even be the first step to recovering. There's different steps while grieving. I think there's 5 steps to grieving, but even once you get to the point of allowing yourself to properly grieve and release, then that itself is just another threshold. Like, a set of stairs overcome, but then you take that first step toward like a new floor or a new level. Um, so grieving is extremely important in order to let the shadows out, but it's also very important to allow yourself the beginning point of a healing journey. Um, a lot of times, grieving will actually resonate you onto a certain path to where um, your life will actually start to evolve or unfold through the feelings that you've actually released. That that maybe that makes sense to some people, maybe it doesn't. But I think for those who have gone through it, you understand that. But yeah, grief is very important. It is important to let it go and not let it build up inside of you. And that's all I have for episode one. Let's see, episode two actually only has 3 notes on it, which is nice. Oof. Okay, this. I remember this note when I wrote this note down. It's a little faded. This note that I wrote down was when Dexter was renting that truck and he found that blood spot. Um, when you do go through when you do go through trauma and your mind actually starts to narrow, like a maybe like a tunnel vision of some sort, what actually happens is the way that you view the world, the way that you perceive the world, actually becomes more immediate or more closed in, and you begin to actually see the world that is more of a reflection of whatever trauma or PTSD you've gone through. So that is how trauma can affect perception, but um, also the thing that you go through. Also, your life is basically going to evolve around whatever traumatic thing you have gone through. Basically, what that means is if you've gone through a very bad, dark, traumatic thing, your future is going to manifest itself or evolve itself around that thing that you've gone through. That attracts certain situations in your life, that attracts certain people in your life, whether these people need you to help them to heal. Um, whether there's people that are attracted to you to help heal you, whether your trauma puts you in a position to where you have a certain insight of the situation and how you handle it can alter the human experience for people in the future. The thing is, you wouldn't have known that you could make such a big change unless you have gone through the traumatic situation of initiation to begin with. So a lot of the trauma that we go through sometimes isn't meant for us. Sometimes we were chosen to have it, or we just happen to have it because the strength that we have can actually evolve the meaning of the PTSD or the trauma. And by having the ability to change that meaning, it restructures our sense of internal power. And with that power, we can learn to influence the world in so many various ways, in different ways, and really help people through it. And you see that in Jordan Chase's character and how he experiences that. I think I'm done with that one. Sometimes yeah, Aster and Cody go back to the house because they feel like they need to be there. They feel like they have to go there, and once they go there, they're like, I think it was Aster who said, I wanted to be here and I thought being here would help me understand and it would make us feel better, but I don't. I feel worse. Um, sometimes a calling, internalized calling to do something. We strongly feel we need to do this thing, and it'll help us, it'll heal us. A lot of times that is very true, but once we go there, it feels twice as bad, twice as worse. The reason for that is that sometimes you have to feel the depth, and the full pain of something harsh and traumatizing that has happened, or the true dark reality of a situation. You have to fully experience it in its depth before you can fully um, heal. The deeper the wound, the deeper the healing type thing. It's like if you're out in the field and you see someone coming at you or someone about to tackle you, you brace yourself and then you get hit, and you don't get hit with the full force. But if you stand there and you don't tense up, then you get hit with the full force of what's coming your way. That can actually happen when it comes to healing and the evolution of the soul, which is if you prepare yourself for healing, then you will not get the full force of that healing. But if you actually just lower your tension, don't resist it, and you let that healing hit you full on, well, then you get the full sense of healing. You are going to get the full sense of pain, but also you have a full sense of healing that comes with that. So, yeah, when you go do something and sometimes it's worse, it's just because it's worse right now to better another path. It's just a baby step toward another path. And right now you just hit that low point. You're in the middle and you're upset and you're in limbo and you're trying to figure out what to do. And then you take that step and you fall down the dark hole. And when you're in that dark hole, the only way to go from there is up. So now everything that you do is gonna be upward, or keep you where you are, or take you upward. Um, to what the last note of the season of this episode was. Oh, that was it. Um, oh, okay, okay. My notes were extended together. That's why. All right, episode 3. Let me make sure I'm still recording, because I would hate to. Okay, still recording. Episode 3. Almost a quarter of the way done. I only have one note for episode 3. Okay, so when you go through trauma, this is going to be kind of a placebo point of view, kind of. Um, the type of emotions that you invest in are emotions that are amplified. So be very careful about when you do go through harsh traumatic situations, because if you focus on certain emotions or thoughts, then you're going to strongly manifest those thoughts within your life, within your experience, within your spiritual eyes, within your emotional eyes. I've been hurt by this person, and if you constantly just focus on that hurt, on what they did to you, well, what you do is you're going to embody what it means to be hurt in such a way that when that happens, you attract people who are going to affirm that belief. You're going to attract people who are constantly going to be physical representations of that traumatic wound that you have created. So it is very important to be mindful about when you go through something. There are going to be a multitude of truths that can possibly happen, a multitude of outcomes that can possibly happen, of paths that you can travel down emotionally or internally. So, having that understanding, you have to be mindful of what emotions you give power when it comes to developing your new body or your new sense of self once you are recovering from trauma. Once you have gone through trauma, the choices you make for healing choices you make are going to heal you in different directions. That is a very important thing to know. And I actually just saw this last night uh, when I was watching the show Roots. This character got hurt, and this character was like, "Oh man, I can't walk anymore. I can't run anymore because they hurt because I got hurt." And he was like, "They should have just killed me instead of hurting me like this, and I can't run. This should have just killed me." And he was hopeless and he was crying. And so this woman is like, "Hey, I got you this customized shoe. I'm gonna put these shoes on you, and I'm gonna help you out. You know, help you out with your foot and everything." And dude was like, "No, get away from me! Like I can't run." And he was at a very hopeless, you know, spot. And she told him she started insulting him, and she was like, what are you gonna do? There's nothing you can do about it. Just take it." So eventually he got upset, and he tried to crawl out of the bed, and he fell, and he grabbed his crutches, and he got his crutches and went after that woman. And then every time he caught up to her, she backed up, and then he moved forward, and she backed up, and that happened a few more times. And then she smiled at him, and I forgot the exact thing she said to him. I think she said, "You're gonna be able to walk again. You got this. You're walking." And the dude that was hopeless, and had his crutches, he was like, "No, I'm gonna learn to run." And he finally smiled after being hospitalized. And I bring that up because it is important to know that no matter how far down you are, you have to find certain emotions to invest in to find some kind of hope or find some kind of healing. You have to do it. You have to make the choice to do that for yourself. If you're going to properly move on from this. Um, a lot of people will purposefully not want to heal for the simple fact that if you remain broken, some people feel if they remain broken, then there's space for them to be loved. Strangely, a lot of people follow that subconsciously. They feel like if they are their best version, that there is no room for any kind of love to come into their life. But as long as they're broken, as long as they have father issues, mother issues, family issues, issues with intimacy, with connecting, and as long as that broken piece is still there, then that's going to be the area where someone is going to fight the most to try and help them out, to try and heal that wound. And as people are trying to heal that wound, that's where the most love is coming in at, because they feel like, "Oh yes, someone loves me because I have this insecurity, or I have this problem, or I have this issue," and this person is constantly in that area trying to make me feel better, and they're feeding me that love energy in this broken space, and why I feel loved and cared for. But then at the end of the day, when they're done, you just feel empty still. Choosing to be choosing life, choosing to be healed, choosing to want to be healed, choosing to want to have a healthy life is something that one must value. It is something that one must do, must find. This new society, this new world does not favor people being happy. It favors pain and anxiety and certain mental turmoil to be a normalcy. That seems to be a new normalcy, but no, these are symptoms. These feelings of these miserable feelings are symptoms of the mind and the body telling us something's wrong. Here's an uncomfortable feeling. Now fix it. The thing is, everyone in the world is feeling these senses, this pain, different kinds of pain. Well, then everyone thinks that it's normal to feel that way, and so it's like, well, why do we need to better ourselves if all this pain and anxiety and all these disability, all this stuff is normal. Everyone has it, so it's normal. It's like, no, it's not. We all gotta work on healing this stuff together. So remaining broken should never, you should never want to remain broken. There are some people who legitimately go through some things that are so traumatic that they cannot find happiness, that they do not have the choice, that they fight for true peace, for true healing, and they cannot get it. So if you're a person who maybe went through something and you think in your mind you should be traumatized about it, a lot of people will do that too. They'll go through something, but they're told by society or they're told by their relatives or their family that, hey, what you went through was trauma. What you went through was oppressive. What you went through was this, or what you went through was that, or this person violated you. This person did this wrong thing to you. You should feel upset. And the people are going to start projecting those emotions. And if you give in to those emotions, then you're just going to end up manifesting a bigger monster within you or a bigger problem within you that you never had before because the situation that you went through was not traumatizing for you. But the situation you went through was maybe traumatizing for other people. And where they may not understand it, where you may not understand it, you will start to convince yourself that, hey, what I went through should traumatize me. So therefore, I'm going to make the necessary steps to resonate with me being traumatized to give myself a sense of understanding that what I went through was not okay. And what you do is you basically gaslight yourself into being traumatized in a situation that was not originally traumatizing to you. A lot of people fall down that trap. A lot of people fall down that rabbit hole. Do not be one of those people who chooses to do that because you don't understand why something didn't break you down or destroy you. There are some people who go through trauma that is so harsh that they do not have the choice to get out of it. So if you don't have to live with trauma, don't force yourself to live with trauma. Do not force yourself to live with any kind of oppression, with any kind of, self gaslighting, any kind of pain. Enjoy your life, enjoy it as much as you can. Horrifying situations can sometimes be healthy, or horrifying situations, or I'll say dark humor, things like that. Horrifying things, situations, moments don't traumatize you can be a good thing because that means your foundation is very healthy. Most people who are into darker things actually have a healthy, good foundation. So it is important to have that understanding. Um, that none of that was in my notes. It just kind of. But anyway, sorry. I'm supposed to stick to specifically the notes of Dexter of the episodes and the point of view of the show. So I do apologize for going off on that. Um, yeah, and for my one note that was for episode 3. Oof, episode 4 has like a couple of notes. I think that might be the longest one. Let's see. Let's see. Dexter. Ooh, okay. So this part of PTSD trauma. Dexter failed to protect his innocence. He failed to protect Rita, and now he's trying to save the innocence of Lumen. A lot of times we can create that type of projection, that type of hero villain mentality, which is, I've been through something so horrifying. I want to stop others from going through that horrifying situation, versus the villain's point of view, which is, I've been through such a horrifying situation that I want others to feel just how horrifying I, just to feel how horrible I feel inside. So we can go through something very painful, and then we go to other people and try to be like we try to help them or do something to help them out of their situation. A lot of people say you can't do one thing to make up for another, which is a weird thing to say, but you can. I said how many victims, how many people have gone through truly horrifying psychological traumatic events only to come out to the other side and become seminar preacher or motivational speakers, and they'll create seminars and they'll go on stage and talk to millions of people, thousands of people, and they'll say, "Hey, I've been through this horrible situation. I was a teenager. I was young, and I had a family member do a very violating sexual act to me, and then I was so horrible that I grew up, and I wanted to stop that from happening to other kids. So, I became a social worker, or I became a person who became a motivational speaker to help bring awareness to this horrible thing that happened, to not just me, but to other people too. And most people in the world probably don't know that this happens. That is a normal response. Um, but you do have the Batman effect where something horrifying can happen to you and you're stuck in that moment somewhere. It's in your psyche. And you constantly live in that moment every single day. And you constantly try to help save other people because deep down inside you're trying to save yourself, or you're trying to save someone that you let down. You're trying to save someone that you feel you failed. And you're constantly trying to help others because you couldn't help, you know, a specific person or a specific situation. I'm just going to bring awareness to that. I'm not going to say if that's right or wrong, try to counteract it, but I do want to bring that to some people's awareness who may listen to this. Um, this and that is a normal response. Um, his next note, yeah, when you are lost in your pain of survival, um, small pieces of reminders rekindle the past. Yes, when you go through trauma and you start losing your memories and things like that, when you lose yourself to such a degree, sometimes you can go through your old closet, go through your old suitcase, find an old DVD or an old VHS movie or something, an old drawing that you made as a child, and say, oh, that thing. I forgot all about that. I was a kid, and you hold it, and you feel who you used to be, and you feel how happy you were. You feel how much you smiled. You feel all those great memories, and they start to come back, and it's like a piece of your soul, a piece of who you were starts to return to you. It's like it resonates with something, and that inner that inner part of you that you feel was lost or broken or gone, it actually starts to come back, as you found something that was a remnant of the past that still holds the energy of those memories. Um, that's just, I guess, food for thought, something to think about. Um, yeah, when we're lost in pain and survival, there are little things, sometimes people from the past that'll come in our lives, and they'll remind us of who we used to be when we were better people, what we didn't tolerate, before we got lost in an abusive situation, things like that. Let's see what my next note was. Oh, okay. You cannot force, you can only provide a safe space and help people reconnect. This was a thought that I did have a few minutes ago when I was talking about my first note on episode 4, and I didn't think to say it because I want to stick to the note. But yeah, this part, when it comes to, being, the trying to, when you've lost something and you try to help other people not lose what you've lost and things like that. This is an extension, this goes into the extension of that, which is you can't force a safe space on people, or you can't force people to heal. You can't just say, hey, I've been through this horrible situation and now I'm helping you get through this horrible situation, and now I'm just gonna constantly get it through your head, constantly project what I've felt onto you until you get it, until you feel right, until you feel grateful, until you're all good. I'm just gonna, I've been through horrible things, and you want to go through horrible things. So I'm gonna say this to you. That's gonna be my advice to you. And if you don't follow it, then that's on you. You're a terrible person. Then you can't do that to people. You can only say, hey, I understand what you've been through, and I'm going to provide a space for you to where you can feel safe, to where you can feel safe enough to want to heal yourself. If you constantly tell someone that they're living wrong, that they're doing things wrong, if you're constantly telling people what they need to do, and if they don't do it, then you make them feel worse about it. Like if you're constantly doing stuff like that, then these people aren't going to properly heal. You have to know how to create safety to where people say, okay, I feel safe enough to let myself want to be healed. I feel safe enough to want myself to feel happy. I feel safe enough to want to laugh. A lot of times people don't feel safe enough to want to have good emotions. They're so broken, they're so scared, they're so damaged inside, and they just don't know how to trust themselves, let alone, and they just don't know how to trust themselves. They don't know how to trust something that doesn't even have a name, that's just with them, just around them. They just don't know how to trust. And if they don't feel safe, then they're not going to want to say, I want to do better. If they don't feel safe, they're not going to say, oh, I want to take control of my life. I want to get myself out of this messed up situation. I want to get myself out of this abusive situation. Simply because sometimes we feel so unsafe and so just unprotected that we don't allow ourselves to feel any kind of good emotion or any kind of hopeful emotion. Because if we do, then we feel like we risk someone damaging that part of ourselves or taking it away from us. Or, as long as I don't feel hopeful, then I don't have a spotlight or a light for someone to shoot out. If I just stay small, then I won't be a big fire and people won't try to put me out. You know what I mean? That's horrifying. No, it's a weird thing to say, but that's just how it feels. Is for some people is they don't better themselves in life, or they don't want to feel happy, they don't want to feel joy, they don't want to feel good, they don't want to smile, they don't want to laugh. They want to, but they can't, simply because they don't know how to feel safe enough to do it without being judged, without being hit, without being hurt in some kind of way, without, hey, that was funny what I just saw on TV, I want to laugh. And then your sibling or your spouse or someone looks at the room, or in the room, and look at you like, did you just laugh? And then, that they make you feel bad for it later. Like, hey, you want to laugh and smile. Just remember about what you didn't get done the other day. Just think about what you didn't do the other day. Just think about what your life is like. Or the classic, the one that almost everyone resonates with, which is, oh, why would you let yourself have a vacation? Why would you let yourself be happy? Why would you let yourself enjoy life right now when you've got all of these other responsibilities to do? when you could just be out working right now? Why are you not out working, slaving yourself? Because the more you don't slave yourself, then, then you can't really, why should you be happy? If you're not, you could be slaving yourself working and trying to do something quote unquote productive, quote unquote productive. A lot of people resonate with that one when they just want to listen to music or just want to watch a movie or they just want to do something that makes them smile or be happy. And they have that voice in their head that's like, no, you shouldn't be happy. You need to be doing something that makes you feel miserable, but gives you the perception of construction. Everything that is constructive in your life should be towards building your happiness, not making you feel worse about being alive. Let me see if I'm done with that. Yeah, so help provide. So, yeah, a lot of people don't have the safe space to be the best version of themselves, let alone to get to know themselves, get to know the better version of themselves, or even take a first step into knowing who they really are deep down inside. Some people just don't have the space to do that. And unfortunately, when you're living with people, unfortunately, when you're under someone else's wing, their feelings, their thoughts, their beliefs, their emotions are forced upon you. And that is the worst thing in the world to be under someone's wing who's the exact opposite of who you are, but constantly claims that they want the exact same thing that you want. But their actions do the exact opposite, and their actions constantly suppress the very thing that you're trying to escalate, that you're trying to bring out, and their actions go against what they say they want. There's nothing more frustrating than that. Nothing more frustrating than a person who says, I love you, and then beats you the next second, makes you feel guilty about it, tells you that you need to be better, and then they will apologize for their actions. Like, what? Anyway, I felt like someone needed to hear that. Yeah, so provide space um, to let people grow. And I don't really want to get too much into cheating or anything like that, but I feel that sometimes people do need to explore some part of themselves and work with them, communicate with them, and say, "Hey, why did you do this thing? We have a relationship. Why did you do this thing?" It's like, don't just communicate. Don't make them feel terrible. Just talk, communicate. If your partner is evolving in life, then just support them. Um, a lot of times we'll feel lonely and depressed, and that depression will stop us from exploring the better parts of ourselves. And once we do find somebody or we find a good relationship, it makes us feel happy. Then once we feel happy, then we say, "Oh, I feel good, and now I feel safe, and now I feel like I'm in a space where I can let myself thrive and let my energy come to life." So that happens, and then when people's energy comes to life, they start making weird choices that they never made before they were in a relationship with you. You never knew this was this about this person. This person maybe didn't know this about themselves. And it's simply because they are in a space where they're happier now. And in that space, they are allowed to explore themselves. And as they do that, sometimes it's ugly. Sometimes it's unpredictable. Sometimes it's strange. But just know that that is a symptom of healing, of being, now to move on from that note, how long have I been recording? Oh, 54 minutes? I thought I was here maybe 20. Try to get through this a lot faster. Or as I need to. Let's see. Oh, okay. Um, Yeah, trust comes from honest intention and honest action. Um, it takes a leap of faith on both parts. Um, when you make a choice, when you make a decision, when you tell somebody something and you have honesty behind it, that honesty is very appreciated. Sometimes it can hurt, but the truth, it matters. It means something, you know. If you're honest with your intention, if you have a good, if your actions and what you say, what you do with somebody is truthful, that's very important, when it comes to a form of trust. And when it comes to trusting, it takes a leap of faith from both sides, from all sides. It takes a leap of faith from, um, it takes a leap of faith from every party to just properly let that situation work of honesty and trust. It takes a leap of faith from all sides. Next note. Oof, oof. That one's a little rough. Okay, this one's a little rough, but I'll get through it quick. Reoffering sense of power. This note I got from the scene when Dexter was in the wasteland with the teenage wasteland, and it's when I'm sorry, no, why did I say that? The swamp. I don't know why I said wasteland, but when they were at the little swamp or whatever, and there was all the barrels, and Lumen was scared, and Dexter was like, "Hey," he opens up the barrel, and Lumen's like, "No." So Dexter gives Lumen the knife. It is important to re-offer someone a sense of power. Um, hey, you've been through a traumatic sexual experience. I'm going to give you control of the situation to where, if we're going to be in this situation, then I'm going to let you be sexually dominant. Um, Something horrifying happened to you. Here's something to give you to make you have a sense of power that if something happens, then you will be able to protect yourself. Um, it is important to sometimes put yourself in that vulnerable position for the sake of your partner's healing. To say, hey, I will be submissive to you. And then when someone is traumatized, they can do something or they'll have something that makes them feel like, okay, I'll be okay. Or it reminds them of what it means to have a sense of control or power all over again. It's like that video when that cop tried to save that dog, and the dog was like in a dangerous position. I think it was going to drown or something, but it was scared of everyone around it. So the cop was like trying to save this dog, and the dog was just growling and showing its teeth. And so the cop went up to the dog and put his hand out and purposely let the dog bite him. And when the dog bit him, then the cop was like, "Okay, you bit me," and he didn't attack the dog. He was like, "You bit me, and it's okay. I'm not gonna hurt you." He didn't jump away. He didn't attack the dog. He didn't grab it. He let the dog bite him, and then he showed the dog, "I'm not a threat to you." And then he was able to slowly get closer to the dog and pet him. And then the dog cooperated. And he was able to save him. Now that is a dangerous thing to do, but it is in the realm of PTSD and trauma, and it is important to understand it from many, many sides. So that's why I bring that up. So, yes, giving someone a sense of power. Um, Back. See where my next note is. Oh, okay. This scene. This was the scene where Deb goes to Quinn's house and Quinn says, or was it Deb who says, yeah, so Deb goes to Quinn's house, and Quinn tries to say, hey, Deb, go away because I'm no good for you. And Deb says, I'm not looking for good right now. And they end up together. This goes into. Let me make sure I'm recording. Still, yes, still good. This goes into another quote, another sense of what was it? It was, oh, the healing process is always going to be a sin, but being healed is the blessing. Um, that quote, I feel like, says a lot of weight on its own. Sometimes healing yourself to receive a blessing is going to be very dark and murky. And sometimes someone says, or sometimes if you're in a situation that ultimately isn't good, sometimes it is what is necessary for you at that moment for you to eventually get to what's good. Because, if a blessing can sometimes, you won't know how to really handle a blessing if you haven't gone through the necessary steps of appreciating it. You know what I mean? Your life could be amazing, your life could be perfect, but unless you've gone through some horrifying things, then you're not going to know how to properly hold on to that blessing or being fully thankful for it or grateful for it. So the process of healing is sin, can be sinful, but being healed is the blessing. Um, Sometimes you'll go through horrifying trauma, and what's necessary is you revisiting that horrific thing. And sometimes you got to learn how to reinvent the situation that happened to you. And once you learn how to reinvent it, and then you can properly heal from it and give it a healthy foundation. And once you have the healthy foundation, then later on, when the blessing comes to you, you will have a different way of nurturing that blessing. So again, last time I'll say the quote. I plan to say the quote. Healing is the sin. Being healed is the blessing. All right, let's see next. Um, Honesty. Wait. What? Honesty comes from the experience, not the story. Yes, honesty comes from the experience, not the story. Wish I remember what scene that was, and I don't have that disc in my system to go to that scene real quick. Um, guess honesty comes from what you do, from how you treat people, how you make them feel, how you allow them to feel. Um, just from what you do, not from what you say. I guess I'm not gonna dwell on that too much. Um, yeah, sharing pain manifests the journey. Oof. So that's my last note for episode 4. Um, when you choose a partner, a kindred spirit, or someone who has gone through the same pain as you, that strongly manifests the journey that you guys are going to take together. Anyway, sorry, always talking too much. Um, yeah. So, oops, there it is. So yeah, sharing your pain with each other will manifest the journey. So if you've gone through something similar as your partner, then the two of you can end up embarking on a journey together that allows you to go through a healing process together. It can also kind of bring you both down into a dark path together, and the darkness can kind of, but that's whatever. What it can do, though, is by sharing your pain with someone else, it actually allows the two of you to heal together. This was, I guess this won't really be a spoiler. This, a perfect example of this would be The Last of Us 2, and I'll actually bring this up at the end of my notes also, because this actually comes back up. When you, um, maybe I'll just talk about that when I get to it later then. But I'm trying to think what better example can I use? I guess it's just literal, just how it is when you share your pain with someone else. When you have pain and they have the same pain, the two of you come together, then you manifest a journey together. And then, yeah, that's just how it is. Okay. Episode 5. Oh, yeah, you can't just move on just because the situation is done. That's not how it works. Um, when a situation happens, a piece of us gets stuck in time, and a piece that's stuck in that moment is a piece of us that's constantly living in that moment every single day of our lives. Um, I think there was just like there was an Avengers movie. Um, anyway, so it was this whole idea of when something horrifying happens, then it's not like it's over. There was a 5 year time skip or whatever, time loop, time whatever, and there was a 5 year of scarring, and there's 5 years of scarring, and people had to learn how to cope with what happened as best they could. Anyway, so yeah, when something horrifying happens to somebody, they can't just move on. I'll just give myself an example instead of referencing another movie. Um, something traumatizing happened to me when I was a child. Many, but whatever. Something happened, and it affected me well into my adulthood. Sometimes people don't even know that they're going through something traumatizing or horrifying. Some people just don't know. Um, some people just don't know how bad it was that what they went through, and you just people can't just move on just because the situation is over. And for you, don't think that just because something happened to you, you're able to move on because you watched someone close to you die, because you were shot at in a drive-by, you know, because you accidentally ran someone's dog over in front of them. Don't just be like, oh, well, that happened. I'm not going to be affected by it. Like, if that was horrifying what you went through. You don't just go through something like that, then move on. Just like when certain people went into war and they had PTSD in war. And I've heard this, I've talked to people, I've seen this so much when you had veterans come back from combat from the war. And as soon as they come back, there are family members and people who are like, oh, the war is over. They're not in a war right now. They need to just get over it. Like, there's no PTSD, there's none of that. That's all just an excuse for these people who've gone through war. Um, it's not real. People, what they're going through, this thing they call PTSD, they just need to get over it. You can't do that to people. You can't say that to people. Moments and situations stick with us. So just because the situation is gone, that doesn't mean you can just move on. And I say that for the people who constantly pressure themselves into saying, I went through this horrifying thing and I need to just move on from it. I need to ignore it. I need to get over it. Don't pressure yourself with that. Don't pressure yourself by trying to force yourself to move on from this. It's not going to work. The voices are just going to get louder. Um, this next note I wrote was when when Lumen rented the hotel, and she made her bed or made a panel to sleep on inside of the closet of the hotel, and she couldn't actually sleep in the bed. This is a symptom that traumatic people do, that we will do when we're traumatized, which is we recreate the thing that made us feel safe when we were in the most distress. Um, if we were ever bullied, if we were attacked by our parents, or assaulted or beat by our parents or something, and maybe we were so small that we hid under the table and then they couldn't reach us, and that was the only time we ever felt a sense of safety. Then what happens is when we feel scared, even in our adulthood, sometimes we'll just embarrassingly crawl underneath the table, underneath the table, and they're like, bro, you're an adult, what are you doing? It's like psychologically, it's the only place that you felt safe. Um, a lot of times in life, we will recreate moments or situations. Maybe even subconsciously, we'll do it. Recreate these situations, or reenact things that made us feel safe when we felt the most unsafe. Um, that is a symptom. Um, yeah. Ooh, okay. Saving someone from their darkness versus helping them through it. Oh wow, wow, this season really did go deep into trauma, didn't it? Because these were all notes that I got from the show as I was watching the show, and I picked up something valuable I wrote down. So these aren't my opinions about trauma or anything. This is what the show I felt was trying to convey to the audience, and I'm just the messenger. Let me make sure I'm still recording. Oh wow, an hour and 12 minutes, and I'm only like halfway done. Anyway, this won't go over 2 hours, I'm sure. Anyway, where is it? Um, I was on episode 4, episode 5. Well, episode 5. Okay, yeah, saving someone from their darkness versus helping them through it. You can't entirely save someone from their darkness. Like Dexter was trying to send Lumen away, and he's like, "Here you go, Lumen. Here's a ticket. I'm saving you from going down this path. I'm saving you from going down this dark path of trying to hurt these people who did what they did to you. So here's a ticket. Leave. Here's a ticket. Get out of here. Let me handle this. I got this." That was more of a Dexter trying to save Lumen from her darkness. But again, it was her darkness, so it was already there. Versus this idea of helping them through it. Um, Trying to save someone, it's the same as being a parent and lying to your kid about their heritage and saying, "Oh, I never told you you were adopted. I just wanted to protect you. Oh, I never told you about our family history because I want to protect you. I never told you that your parent or grandparents were actually famous murderers because I wanted to protect you." It's like, why? Like, you shouldn't. It's basically like that, where you try to prevent someone from understanding something that is already inside of them. And if you're constantly trying to protect them from it, they're not going to know how to properly deal with it. And if they don't know how to deal with it, and if they don't know where it comes from, then they're probably just going to think, this is who I am. This was my personality. This is all me. And this is a part of me that I need to learn how to, adjust into my life. And, I'll give you my example of that is when I learned about zodiac signs. And when I found out about my zodiac sign, when I learned about Capricorns, then I looked at the traits of Capricorns and I was like, this trait, this, and Capricorns are like this and that. And I was like, I guess, that makes sense. So when I read what Capricorns were like, and I read what their quotes, what their personalities and their traits were like, there were some traits that I didn't favor, but they were part of my sign and things like that. So what I actually did was, sorry, one second, need to remember what note I'm on, so that way I don't lose or don't forget the point of why I even brought this story up. Okay, so I was on the saving someone from their darkness versus helping them through it. Yeah, I guess my example would be that when I would learn about my sign, then I got to learn all of my personality traits and who I was and everything like that. I was all like, this whole time I thought that it was me, or I thought that maybe I had some kind of demonic possession, or I had all these demons, or someone put a curse on me, or it was witchcraft, or I'm being a bit extreme, but I thought there were so many things. And then when I read my zodiac sign and I saw the personalities and everything, I was like, oh, this makes sense. So, I looked at all the other signs and I was like, let me see these other signs and see other personalities and, you know, just kind of feel it out, just be like, oh, just because I'm told I'm this sign, I'm going to look at it and I'm going to identify with all the traits and then I'm going to go down that rabbit hole. I didn't want to do that. So I did look at the other signs and I understood that it's not that we don't have all the traits of all the signs, it's the fact that there's a certain place in them in psychologically that is heavily defined by specific traits of the signs. But then that goes into the whole planetary alignments and the star radiation and how star radiation affects the chemistry, the chemicals in the brain, and by affecting those chemicals, it changes the formula of how certain brain patterns are produced, and then those brain patterns that are produced are actually traits that fit certain zodiac signs. So, there's a whole explanation behind why certain star placements affect how our brain develops when we're young, on a chemical level and star radiation level. But yeah, so when I learned about my past, I learned about my sign, then I began to understand, oh, these traits have been given to me through my heritage. These traits have been given to me through my sign. These traits have been given to me through the stars, and I was able to really decide who I was versus how I've been influenced through the various elements around me. Um, so that so you can't really help save somebody by keeping certain truths from them that's already inside of them. You just have to learn how to help people get through their darkness and help them get through what they're feeling and just be there with them through every step of that journey. You can't just say, hey, I'm going to stop you from being this person. I'm going to stop you from being like this. I'm going to stop you from being like that. Like, nah, you gotta just be there, help support them. And also, because sometimes going through the journey of their darkness helps them learn how to overcome their darkness. If you deny them the ability to go through that journey, then you deny them to heal. They're just gonna hate themselves as they grow older. Oh man, another page is being ripped out. All right, the next note. We have three more notes for episode 5. Oh yeah, um, yeah. Another symptom of PTSD or trauma can be the desperation to want to heal. This was with Lumen. Oh, sorry, 1 second. Sorry. This was when Lumen was in the bridge and she was telling Dexter, I need this. I need to get this guy. I need to shoot this man. I need to do all this. And Dexter was like, no, go away. But we'll go through this point where we will feel desperate to want to heal. And it's like what Lumen said, I just want this to go away. I don't want to go through this anymore. I just want it all to disappear. I can't remember her exact line, but um, that's a symptom of we just don't want to go through this. We just don't want to. This trauma that we've gone through will be so overwhelming and can be so just overbearing to the point where we're just like, I just want this to go away. I don't want to deal with this. I just want it gone. And we'll try to force ourselves, or we'll feel so desperate to just want to move on from the situation. Just a symptom, just a note. Um, but also in our desperation to try to heal, we can also make some rash decisions that can ultimately be destructive in other ways, in other areas of our life. So we just gotta be careful with when we get to that point of being desperate to want to heal, and we can cloud our judgment, same as how Dexter's judgment was clouded. And the guy had the ankle bracelet and Dexter almost killed him. You can't be too desperate to heal, because then you miss the whole point of the journey itself, or the meaning of being healed. Same with yeah, creating anyway. So oh yeah, and then when Lumen was at the airport and they had to do a pat down, and that triggered her. Yeah, when you go through trauma, very small things will can traumatize you. Very small things can trigger, not traumatize you, can trigger your true trauma. For me, it was a couple of things. Sometimes being around children was a mental trigger for me, because it reminded me of how vulnerable and defenseless that I was as a child. So children would scare me, babies would scare me, because I saw how vulnerable they were, how weak they were, how much they needed to be protected, and it reminded me of how much I needed to be protected. And then that just brought that demon or that shadow right back out in me. And then I got scared, and looking at babies, being around children was a very harsh trigger for me. I just couldn't do it, because it reminded me of how I was damaged and what I lost. I say it like it's past tense. I'm still that way. I was actually a custodian at a high school, at a school, and I would actually hide in the office for like an hour or so until school was out and all the kids left. Fortunately, that meant that I got my work done late, but but yeah, it was always, every single day of that job was a harsh mental trigger, being around all those kids. But yeah, let's see what the next note is. The last note for episode 5. You can't move on until your pain is addressed. That is why Lumen could not leave the airport, because when pain happens, you are not going to be able to move on with your life or move on to something better until you've addressed what has happened to you. it can be dangerous willingly going down that path of darkness, willingly going down that route. It's a very hard thing to say because sometimes it is necessary to walk through the flames of hell if you're going to escape hell. The problem is sometimes you can get lost, which most of the time you don't. But the main problem is the punishments. That's one thing that's one of the hard things is when it comes to the truth of how to heal the soul, there are certain things that are put in place that actually kind of prevent the necessary things that are needed for a person to properly heal from horrible things that have happened to them. And I'm speaking in code, I'm trying to talk around certain things. But I think certain people are smart enough to, or they know enough to understand what it is I'm trying to say. But you do sometimes have to learn how to walk down that path of darkness to heal from it. Sometimes say, oh, I went through something horrifying, but then now you have like, a sudden urge to do something or to do something for yourself that you know would heal you or that you know would make you better. Sometimes it's just unfavorable or frowned upon by people, but sometimes you have to do it. You have to go down that path. When you go down a path of darkness like that, whatever the energies you hold inside of you are, whatever the frequencies are that are inside of you, you will begin to attract and manifest and live those frequencies that are within the darkness that you have taken on. Once these frequencies have hit you, however, now you need to become the master of these frequencies and you have to learn how to properly cleanse them and properly address them in such a way. Um, yeah, remember there cannot be any order without first being chaos. No, episode 6. All right, 127. Still recording. Um, episode 6. Halfway through the season. What is this? Create a healthy. Oh yes, Dexter. Dexter. I believe this was the episode when Lumen shot the. Not was it Dan the dentist? I think it was Dan. I think it was Dan the dentist. I think. So this recreate a healthy sense of traumatic triggers. What this means is when you have PTSD and you have things that trigger you, that trigger your PTSD, you can sometimes create healthy experiences through the triggers. Which means if you were someone, a woman, or someone who was dominated, or you were taken control of, or taken advantage of against your will, and verbally, mentally, things like that. And what happened is you were constantly just told what to do. You were told what not to do. You were told to do this, do that with your life, and you're just like, oh, I don't know what to do. I'm scared now because I was always yelled at to do this and do that right, and I couldn't do it right, and you know. So when you've been yelled at and you've been dominated to that point, that destroyed you and destroyed your ability to think for yourself or make choices for yourself or for your life, and You just feel like you're just lost and broken, little things like a man raising his voice at you or whatever. Certain things can just trigger you, and you're just like, no, and you'll snap and you'll just snap at him. But what can happen is you can find a man, or you can find somebody who does the same thing, raises his voice, and is very dominant, but they're dominant in a loving way. Instead of saying, hey, you need to do this for me right now, so you can have a better person show up and say, hey, get dressed right now because I'm taking you out for something to eat. Or, hey, we're going to the movies right now. Or, hey, you look upset about something, so I'm going to go ahead and make your favorite dinner and you're going to like it. Things like that. Or sometimes, they sound weird, but sometimes someone went through a harsh sexual experience and it was forced upon them and they're damaged. And sometimes reforcing a sexual act on someone. And I know I don't know how that's going to come out, me saying that, but sometimes doing that, but with someone you love and care about, and you dominate someone sexually that you love and care about, and there's a loving intent behind it, that can also be that can also be a healthy trigger, in a sense, because now you've taken this basic idea of dominance and you've stopped it from being oppressive and destructive, and you've taken the same thing, same idea, same concept, dominance, and you've actually fed it with love. You fed it with care. You fed it with nurturing. You fed it with a sense of willpower of, I want to give you a sense of these experiences that you've gone through have been soiled and tainted. But now I'm going to recreate these experiences, but have a different intent behind it, which is going to be healing. So it's like reprogramming, emotional reprogramming. Again, it's not something people want to talk about, but um, yeah. So every now and then, create healthy triggers. I'm gonna dominate the situation to make it better, not make it harder for you. um, I believe that's also why certain traumatic things that we go through end up creating sexual fantasies or fetishes that we have. Um, for those of you who know about that or heard of that. All right, the next note I have for episode 6. Okay, so yeah, there's going to be a struggle between logic versus emotion when it comes to trauma. And you do see that a lot in Dexter's and Lumen's argument in that episode, which is my favorite episode of the show. I can't remember the name of it, which is weird. I don't know if it was called Circle Us or something like that. But it's when Dexter asked Lumen, "Did you even find the right guy?" And Lumen was like, "Yes, I recognized the way that he smelled and what he said to me and the sound of his voice when I was blindfolded and this and that." And Dexter was like, "So you shot a man based on a feeling and an odor." So that was a basic example of logic versus emotion. And if you look at a traumatic situation logically, you're gonna make someone feel crazy. But if you use emotions with logic, if you use emotions with trauma, you begin to understand how a deeper part of them has been affected and has been destroyed. And let it is important not to, not to let one or the other fully dominate the situation. Not to say, not to be over emotional about it, but at the same time not to be over logical about PTSD also, because logically PTSD is probably not going to make sense to most people. I'm trying to keep my voice down because I'm actually not alone, and I don't want anyone hearing this. Some changes are so big that they change our DNA. Yes, we'll go through traumatic situations, and then we will have children, and then our children will sometimes take on the traits of who we are. But we are who we are through the experiences that we have. So yes, some trauma that we go through actually affects our neurons, neurological development, and then it becomes a part of our DNA, and we can pass that DNA down. That is how you have black people who have gone through so much, gone through slavery, gone through civil rights movements, and that DNA that's in those experiences are in the DNA of black people. So when people will say, "Oh, why are you acting like you were there? Why are you acting like you were a slave and you went through civil rights and all that?" Because it's in our DNA, it's in our heritage, it's in who we are, it's in the development of who we are. Those harsh experiences are still inside of us. That is why. Sorry about that cough. Um, Yes, so some experiences do change our DNA, and our DNA actually interacts differently with the higher universe. But I'd rather not get too much into that spiritual stuff right now. But DNA and and spirituality do clash at some point, um, and the universe does manifest differently. Our lives manifest differently depending on what our DNA is. So that's why there's certain things like, food that alters DNA or music or something that alters DNA because once the DNA is altered, then it has a different chemical reaction to the universe itself. And when that chemistry does its thing, then life manifests itself as a reflection of what is within someone's DNA. And that's why certain vegans and people like that, not even necessarily just them, that's why people say when you have hormones, artificial hormones, or when you have animals that have been under a lot of stress or they've been slaughtered, their body releases, their brain releases those hormone chemicals into the bloodstream of, hey, I'm dying, panic, fear, anxiety, and all those emotions and hormones that are shot within the blood get stuck inside of the meat of the animal, and then when the animal dies, those hormones are still stuck inside of the meat. So then that meat gets sent out to the public, and when people eat it, people are actually eating those emotions, those feelings that a lot of the animals had in their last moments before they were slaughtered or killed. When that happens and people ingest those hormones, it gets in their DNA, and that creates very oppressive feelings, very oppressive emotions, very oppressive DNA, releases, and then as we go on through life, we start manifesting things that are reflections of our deeper pain and of oppression and of fear simply because of the way that we eat the meat. That is the point of view of what people were saying when they're like, this is why meat's not important, or this is why meat is not good for you, and things like that. Just quick little side note. Yeah, so yeah, who knows? I may not ever bring that up again in another movie review. So yeah, next note, episode 6. I don't even know what that word is. Contarm. Oh, compartmentalization. I forgot what compartmentalization actually means. Um, Oh, basically taking a piece of your mind, disassociating it, and trying to compact it within a single or linear way of thinking and perceiving. I believe that's the basic way I can give that definition. But that's something that we do when we're traumatized. Is when we're traumatized, our brain will block a lot of things out. It will block everything out, and then it will kind of go into a small little cubby, and the world will seem very small, very very small, and we will isolate pieces of our consciousness in different parts of our mind. Yeah, these separate parts will eventually come back together in some way. Anyway, um, ooh, Lumen in the bathroom. I actually want to look at the DVD to actually understand that what I meant by that note. Um, I feel like it's very important because this note says there's a punishment for wanting to live my life. And I think what that actually means, you know what? Forgive all the noise because I'm going to be let me put that disc in. I guess what that means is sometimes people will feel like they're punished for. Hmm, sorry, I'm actually trying to think. What did I mean by that? I guess do feel some people do feel like they're punished for just wanting to just live their own life. Or if you've been through a hard traumatic situation, then sometimes you just want to be better, or you just want to be yourself, or you just want to heal. And people around you may not understand what you mean by that, or they'll just say, you know what, you shouldn't be doing that. This is not the right way to live. This is not the right way to be who you are, or get through life, or get through your day. And people will constantly judge you for just trying to be better. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to maybe skip that note for now and move on to the next note, and then I will come back to it because I have the DVD in right now, and oh my gosh, these papers. I'm gonna get back to that. So I wanna get that right. I feel like it's important. The last note for episode 6. Yes, trauma. Oh, okay. Wow. So another dynamic between Dexter and Lumen's character is the way trauma manifests in childhood versus how trauma affects in adulthood. And Dexter feeling trauma through childhood, and Lumen experiencing trauma through her adulthood. I don't know how to properly explain the details of that. I'm not properly equipped to do that. Um, I'm not properly equipped to do that. But trauma can happen when we're adults. Trauma can happen when we're children, and when it happens to us when we're adults, we have a story to tell. Everything is illuminated. That's the name of the episode. We have a story to tell. We have something to affiliate it with. Life is just different for us. We've gone through something so horrible, versus being traumatized as a child, and it's just like this is all we know is we've had to develop our entire life based on this horrifying thing that's happened to us, and now we've just become a product. We've just become a mold, a shell of it, basically. um, yeah. So yeah, trauma can happen in adulthood when we're conscious, and it'll happen to us, and we'll just have to learn how to get to know what we've, you know, listen, we have a story, we have a history with childhood. It's just like sometimes we won't always remember what happened to us, but we will develop around the energy of what happened to us. It'll stick with us. Okay, going through this episode again, compartmentalization. I get it now. Compartmentalization is a defense mechanism. And yeah, what it meant was in order to stop the entire structure of the mind from being destroyed or affected by a traumatic situation, then the effect of the trauma of the situation is isolated into one specific area of the mind. And what we do is we take the damage and we isolate that psychological damage into one section of our lives, and we stop it from infecting all the other pieces of our life, of ourselves. And we can see this a lot in like something horrible happened to me, and maybe you had a kid or something, and the kid was born because out of an abusive situation or whatever, and then you can't afford to have the kid, so you leave the kid and you move on, and then you have a new family and a happy family. You're all together. You're so happy together, and that child that you abandoned comes back and finds you, and it's like, hey, I was your child that you abandoned and left many many years ago, and I forgive you, and I'm here. You're just like, yeah, you're a child that was born out of a bad situation, and it was a situation that I do not wish to allow to re-enter my life, and I don't want that to be remanifested into my new life. So you go away. It's basically sort of like that. It's just um, taking a situation or memories and isolating them away from a new life, having a terrible history or terrible past in a city or a state, and then taking a flight to a different country, taking a flight to a different city, and saying, "Hey, I'm gonna start my life over again because all this horrible stuff that I've went through in my life, that I went through in this city, in this town, I want it gone. I can't deal with it. I just want a chance to start over again." And what we'll do is, oh, the wind's picking up. I better hurry with these. Better hurry. Yeah. So what we'll do is we'll keep our old life and our new life separated, and we'll say, okay, cool. And then sometimes we'll have different groups of friends, family members, different parts of our lives that need to be separate. And you have that one person that crosses that line. You're like, uh oh, family member just met a friend, and get that weird, awkward feeling. That can also happen with trauma. Um, all right, so, oh, what was I looking for? Yeah, a punishment for. Okay, so I do apologize now that I'm actually going through the DVD. The part where the punishment of being who you are, I specifically remember when I did write that note, I told myself that I was going to rewatch this scene before I did my recording. And it was because this was the scene where Dexter went to the bathtub and he's with Lumen in the bathroom. And, and as they're talking, Lumen gives her heartfelt speech, and Dexter gives his heartfelt speech, being honest with Lumen about what happened to him and everything like that. I don't want to rewatch this scene and talk about it as it goes because I have a lot to get through. I can't find my remote to unmute the TV. But I do need to find that remote at some point. So let me just get it over with. Okay, I found it. Um, I do apologize. I do apologize for not being able to just edit the recording. I do apologize for that. Um, so yeah, forgive me for the silence for the next like minute or so. Is if I do stop my recording or pause it, it's gonna cause a whole nother issue. Okay, yeah. So Lumen tried to, yeah, she was getting married, and then she wasn't ready for marriage, and then she wanted to leave, and she wanted to do what was best for herself, and do what was best for her life, and do what was best for her development. And she didn't want to deal with the pressures of, other people punishing her for wanting to live her own life and having people judge her for making the decisions that she wanted to make for herself because she knew what was right for her. She knew what was right for her development. And, she constantly felt like she was being punished for making choices that she knew was best for herself. Um, I'm sure a lot of us can understand that. Unfortunately, though, I do have to move on from that because I have wasted too much time. And I am going to go straight to episode 7. Now, sometimes our darkness is actually the light to other people. Sometimes, I wish I can remember exactly what scene that note was from. But yeah, sometimes the horrible. Oh, yes, it was the fact that what Dexter went through that made him into a serial killer and everything. What Dexter went through is his darkness. Being a serial killer is his darkness. However, that was also Lumen's light. That was also the path for Lumen's light for her to go through what she went through. That created the necessary healing for her. Sometimes we go through traumatic situations, and to us, it's horrifying. It's like a heavy weight. But when we talk with certain people, we're like, hey, my heart is broken, but it's expanded. And because it's so big, I can help you understand and have you help. I can love you. I can help you understand what you're going through. I can help you have a better voice or a better understanding of what it is you're going through. Something along the lines of that. But also, someone can go through something really, really bad and it makes them over dominant, over controlling, and that can be seen as bad. But at the same time, they could be in a relationship with somebody who doesn't make choices for themselves. So that person who is dominant they use that dominance as like a defense mechanism because they don't want to be vulnerable. So they've created this hard shell that's made them dominant. And then that dominance, however, ends up finding somebody who lives a submissive life, and them having somebody be dominant helps that submissive person find some kind of guidance in life, or it helps that submissive person learn to feel more empowered within themselves, things like that. And I'm not trying to antagonize right now, so I'm just trying to say that sometimes people's harsh shadows can be the solution to other people, and it could be the thing that saves other people. So, keep that in mind. um the horrifying things you go through can sometimes save others. uh let people be a part of their own healing. Yes, don't just try to forcefully heal people, or just be like, here's a solution, or manipulate the people or the situations around them, to try and make them heal or anything like that. Nah, you gotta let people be a part of their own healing. And in this episode, or yes, I think this was the episode where Dexter says, "We gotta go do this," and Lemon was like, "You said we." You gotta just let people be a part of their own healing. Don't let them just watch, or just let them be a part of it. It's important that they go through the journey, even if you're trying to help somebody out. It's good to walk with them through the journey, and it's good to let them be a part of it. Don't just say, "Hey, I'm broken and I need help." And um, I guess, wow, I just actually watched a movie, a hood movie, 3 Minutes to Society, I think, and this girl got pregnant, and she was like, told her brother or her cousin or something. She was like, "Oh, this dude got me pregnant, and he doesn't want to take care of the kid." And so her cousin was like, "Oh, don't worry, I'll go handle this dude." And he goes up to the house and he shoots at the house and everything. Um, I know, a terrible example, very terrible example. But the point I'm trying to make is, instead of her dealing with the situation, or with her and her cousin dealing with it together, the cousin was like, "I'll handle the situation for you," and shot up this man's house. And I don't even think this guy was the dad to begin with, And it was just a horrifying scene, horrifying situation, scary. I shouldn't have used that as an example, but I did. I guess the point is, you can't be doing things for people all the time. You have to let them be a part of the situation, if they're going to evolve with the situation. Yeah, yeah. So don't deny people's healing. They need to get involved. Get their hands dirty. Cool. On the next page, sorry, sorry that was a bit loud. I'm on the next page. So now my notes are almost done. Like I said, some of these episodes don't really have any notes. Okay, so this is going to be very hard to go through this episode 7. Time is an illusion to the soul. Yes, time is an illusion to the soul. So the soul doesn't just move on like how we do. There's a different perception of time. Our soul has different memories, and you can actually reprogram those memories. You can actually put yourself in a situation where you relive your memories, and then you can actually play out a different scenario in your head, or emotionally, energetically, and that can actually help you heal. There's some shamans that do that. Some multiversal healing, time healing, things like that, memory healing. When If you believe in that stuff, there's a method where there's an infinite amount of possibilities of things that can happen. And what you do is you find someone's memories, put them under like a hypnosis or a state or whatever, and have them relive a past memory. But then you take the outcome of like an alternate timeline or something, and you say, hey, in alternate timeline, this other thing happened, not the traumatic thing, but this more healthier thing happened. And then when that happens, you actually restart or reprogram the memory. When you reprogram that memory, it reprograms a piece of that soul in a sense, and the development forward is different, and it's more healed than fractured. But, yeah, time is an illusion to the soul. So when trauma happens, the piece of the soul gets stuck in time, and that's what allows us. That's what makes us constantly relive trauma because a piece of us is still in that point in of time. Um, in our minds, um, different pieces of us exist in different points of time simultaneously, and our emotions and our thoughts and how we feel every day are just symptoms of where our soul is at on different levels simultaneously, different pieces. Anyway, different partners come into our lives for different reasons, and where it's like we're bound together. So sometimes a certain person will be attracted to you. They'll be and they'll be in your life for a certain amount of time, and then you'll learn something about them, or heck, they'll learn something about you. And then you guys go your separate ways. Just different people have different roles in our lives. Um, for a partnership to work, you have to accept each other for who they are. They may be different from you in so many ways, but if a partnership's going to work, you have to accept them for the person that they are. They have to accept you for the person that you are. Things like that. And you can't always expect to have a perfect relationship with every person you come across because different relationships are created to give us different experiences or different um different messages, lessons. There we go. Lessons is the word. Yeah, sometimes people are forced into our lives. Sometimes people will force their way into our lives, and at some point, sometimes we realize that we need them. Sometimes people will be forced into our lives until we realize how much we need them. That's a very hard lesson, but sometimes you have people who are just obsessed, but sometimes you have people who force their ways into our personality, our lives, our everyday situations, and we're just like, yo, I want this person to go away. I want this person gone. This person is annoying. And sometimes they're there, and then we stop and we're like, huh, I actually need this person. A lot of times that happens with family, and we get so annoyed with family members, and we're just like, these kids, I don't like these kids. Oh, this person, I don't like this person. And they're just constantly there. And then at some point, you're like, yeah, I guess that they actually keep me sane. They keep me from heartbreak. They keep me from bad things. Or they've always kept you from bad things the whole time. You just never realized it. Episode 8. We are. Oh, okay. Take it. As Jordan Chase says, we are born primal. We are born with, a coding in our DNA that really guides us through life, that manifests us. We're born with a coding in our soul that's embedded within us that manifests, and creates us physically, creates our intentions, our feelings. We're born with a primal compass that we do not get from our parents. We are born primal to fight for what we desire, But unfortunately, we've traded nature for society. And what we need to do, who we need to be in nature, and spiritually, intuitively, emotionally, who and what we are as humans, what we're capable of doing, what the primal sense of humanity is, has been traded for the sense of corporations and buildings and money and social media and likes and things like that. But what humanity is, what nature is, we've traded that for the synthetic city society, city life. Um, yeah, yeah. At some point, we're all gonna die, but at some point, we're all gonna die physically. But if you're not in touch with your primal self, with your soul, with a deeper sense of who you are, then you're already dead. You're basically a walking zombie. You're that was something that was a strong message in like the first ish season of The Walking Dead, which was this idea of um, you're you're already you're zombie walking. You're already dead if you don't learn to listen to the truth of who you are. You know, we're all gonna die physically, but if you're not in touch with who you truly are, then you're basically already dead because you're not in tune with the truth of who you are. You're just a walking shell, a meat puppet, walking piece of flesh in the world. That's not living. Living is taking the frequencies of you, taking the truth of who you are, and giving it a chance to live out in the world. Giving yourself a sense of fulfillment. You use your instincts to create the life you deserve and to fuel your passions. And that's how you live. That's how you live a good, fulfilling life. Um, so yeah, use your instincts to create the life that you deserve, the life that you want, and to really be a motivation for doing what makes life feel like it's worth living, whether it's for family, whether it's for your friends, whether it's, you have a passion for writing, for music, for just playing, if you have an actual passion for it. Not it's fun, but an actual deep passion. Even if it's other activities as well. But yeah, just listen to, create the life that you want. Your instincts will always tell you what you need to do for your life. Um, and don't get yourself stuck in ended relationships. Don't get yourself stuck in situations that don't serve you or your higher purpose or what you need to do for your own future, for your life, or for your family. Um, Dad doesn't feel bad about shooting that dude in the bar, because yeah, again, sometimes we're in situations where we need to be who we need to be for that moment, and it doesn't need to stick with us. Sometimes reconnecting with people from the past reconnects us to different universal pathways. And when we see someone from the past, and they're like, "Hey, you remember me from middle school? You remember me from elementary school? Remember me from this time, so and so, when we're this age?" That actually reconnects you to different paths that could have been taken from, if you made different choices from that, that version of yourself. Life and opportunities are just manifestations of who we are in this current moment and from the choices that we've made. And sometimes someone from the past or a remnant from the past. Okay, okay, start recording. Cool. Sometimes people from the past or remnants of the past will show up and will remind us of who we used to be. And being reminded of who we used to be provides an opportunity to go down a different neurological path. But, we won't go too far into that. Um, Taking it. Wait, hold on. What does this say? This is when my writing got a bit. The pen started to bleed through the paper, and the writing from the other page is like being seen through this paper. Oh, okay. Owen's character. Oh, I'm so glad I wrote Owen. Sometimes, when you take it and you go after what you want, it sometimes leads to an ending. Owen found out what he wanted, and he decided to seize his desires. And as Jordan Chase would say, take it. That is exactly what Owen did. And Owen pursued Lumen and tried to go back to Lumen. He found Lumen, and he's like, hey, I'm back. I'm here. I want to be with you. And he fully invested himself into going after his desire. Sometimes fully going after the desire leads to a dead end, or fully following your desire leads you into a person that you really want to be with, or you really care about, and you guys reconnect temporarily. But then that person will say, "Hey, this isn't going to work. The situation just doesn't work out." Sometimes it is important to fully follow your instincts and to fully pursue what it is you want. Because if something is not meant for you, then your instincts will actually tell you to purposefully invest in this situation that is not for you. Sometimes your intuition, your instincts will tell you to fully pursue this person, fully pursue this situation, fully pursue this whole circumstance, just to purposefully make you fail. Just so that when you fail, you can actually release a what if scenario, or to release a situation that ultimately may not have been good for you, or may be destroying you inside. And your instincts will say, okay, you're not going to be able to move forward or do what you love to do because you have so much remnants of the past holding you back. So your instincts will tell you to purposefully pursue a certain path just so that you can get it out of your system, or pursue a person so that way you can face that full rejection and be like, okay, now I can let you go because I know that there's no possibility that this can go any further. Um, Oof. Yes, falling in darkness can be healing when you're with someone safe. When you are completely vulnerable, you completely break down those walls when you're completely just exposed and vulnerable. When you fully fall into that sense of darkness and you're fully just gone. Sometimes that person can be there for you and say, "Hey, I'm here. You're in that darkest part of who you are, and I'm right here by your side." Maybe they don't have to say anything. Maybe they can just be there, and they see you at your lowest point. They see you lost. And sometimes it can be healing to fully let that dark part of yourself out to the full extent, but still have someone there that is willing to accept you, who is ready to accept you. Sometimes, though, what I am saying also is sometimes we need to be that person for others. Sometimes when other people have their full psychotic meltdown or they show their full darkness, sometimes we got to be there and say, hey, I'm still here. I understand. I got you. A very, very bad, a very, very harsh situation I'm going to bring up right now. You have to be very mature to handle what I am about to say. You have to be mature. You have to. There was a situation where this guy was abusive. He was mean. He was angry. This person ended up abusing his wife, and he fully let anger out on her. And after he abused her, after he hit her, after he did what he did, and he let all that anger out, and he let all that darkness out, and he revealed to his wife this deep sense of hate that he has for women, this anger that he had for his mom and everything. It wasn't that she wanted to accept the abuse or stay there after that situation happened. It was the fact that she saw how broken he was. She saw the raw form of what his darkness was. And after seeing that, she was there for him and was like, I see you, and I understand that you are a broken soul. And she was there, and she was like, I got you. I see that you've fully let this darkness out, and I see that you've hurt me, and I see why you done what you did to me. And she was like, I got you. She was not willing to stay there if the abuse was repetitive. But what she realized in that moment is he fully let that demon out, and it was a moment where it was vulnerable, and she replaced that, where that shadow and that pain was. She replaced it with a sense of love, of being there for him. And when she did that, the shadow, the darkness, the anger, the hate that he had was gone. um I'm not going to say let yourself be abused, or this it's just is going to work every time. This may not ever work. This is not something that you need to purposefully do. This is something that will exist in the intuition. And if you have the power or the gift to do that level of healing, then yeah, then you have that gift, and it will come out when it needs to come out. The thing about power is power will always come out when it needs to come out, not always when you want it to. Again, a harsh example, but mm, um, yeah. So sometimes falling in darkness can be healing when you're with someone safe, when you're fully lost and you break down. That person can be there for you, and that can be healing. When the primal self shatters, it reaches out to what will make it whole again. When we lose something inside of us, it tries to say, hey, we got to replace this. Whatever it is that we lost, we need to find it again. I guess that one's more self explanatory. But just don't fall into any addictions or bad habits when trying to find that thing, trying to go through that. Anyway, yeah, I did talk about multiversal connections. Um, I don't exactly know how deep I was gonna go into that, but yeah, when we are broken, we are connected to many different pathways of how we can heal ourselves. We have different multiversal pathways within us that we can take to form um, a new healing body for ourselves. Episode 9. I have a few more notes and I'm done. Being broken creates an opportunity to put yourself back together in any way or in alternate ways. So when you do break your when you are broken down or you are broken, then you are able to rebuild yourself in a different way, different structure, recreate yourself in a more powerful way. So just keep that in mind that whenever you do feel broken, it means you can reinvent yourself better than how you were before. Yeah. Trauma doesn't always have to be bad. Yes, this episode, Teenage Wasteland. Yeah, sometimes you got to put yourself out there for other people when you're helping them with healing. Now, I get that this is a weird thing to have written a note about because a lot of what I'm saying, a lot of people are going to seem like these are weird scenarios or situations that would never actually happen. We would never be put in situations like this or partnership. The thing is, you would be surprised at what people actually go through that you don't go through. You'd be surprised at what people experience in life that we cannot perceive. We're on different wavelengths, different brain chemistries. You'd be surprised what people are exposed to. You'd be surprised at what people are actually capable of doing. Because one of the weird things about human society now is we are constantly trying to figure out, constantly trying to put something in its place, put everything in its place. And we are completely ignoring the fact that maybe we need to expand and create more opportunities, and things will find their own place as we expand ourselves, as we expand our perceptions of life, our we expand our opportunity, our understanding of life, our opportunities in life. We expand our emotional capacities. We expand our mental capacities. We explore ourselves spiritual expand ourselves spiritually. As we start to create more opportunities for the human experience, then you would understand that a lot of the stuff that is unfulfilled inside of us is there because we need to expand to fit all the pieces inside of a bigger puzzle. So when I say things and when you're exposed to things that don't make sense, it's actually because there's an expansion in human consciousness or understanding, and the tools are already there. We just need to make room to fit all of these tools. That's one reason why I appreciate modern day movies, because modern day movies don't make sense, or a lot of people can't connect to them simply because a lot of modern day movies are actually created for the expanding mentalities of people who have a bigger, broader understanding or experience with life. And when they see certain modern day movies, especially with Marvel, then it's like, oh, this was actually pretty deep. This was more in depth. This, and this. And it's like, yes, you've expanded yourself emotionally and mentally to the point that you were able to grasp and understand what this story was trying to convey to you or trying to tell. So when you say things like, yeah, putting yourself out there for other people, um, that can be healing within someone's journey. Is sometimes someone will feel like no one has their back, no one loves them, no one cares. But then when you say, hey, I'm going to put myself in a situation right now to help somebody out, to help my friend out, to help my family out, to help protect someone else, that means a lot. That can really help someone, especially if someone's being abused and you go out of your way to help them out. Episode 10. This is what the Last of Us 2 thing was about. True intimacy is darkness shared. And then The Last of Us, there was a story of, a lot of people are like, "Oh, you got to be happy. You got to be happy. Yeah, everyone can be happy." And then when you guys come together, and then you guys can like have intimate moments, and it'll be beautiful. And you just got to have everything all together. True intimacy isn't always about that happiness or all that. Sometimes intimacy is about the true depth and darkness that people have gone through, or the pain that they have inside of them, how the depth of their heart. And once you connect to the depth of their heart, then that's where real intimacy actually is. I say that in Last of Us 2 because it wasn't until this was a beautiful scene. Everyone laughs about it as if it's a comedy scene, and they say it's disgusting and it's gross, and they just laugh at it, and they're just like, "Oh my gosh, this whole game is a joke." But it was a beautiful scene in the game, um, and it was the fact that this dude, ironically Owen, he was trying to get at Abby, and he was like, "Oh, I love you, I love you." Throughout their childhood, they're growing up, and she's like, "I'm gonna try not to spoil it too much, but And it wasn't until Owen's constantly trying to get Abby throughout their life, constantly trying to make her happy, trying to make her smile, trying to love her, trying to show that he loves her, and she just wasn't going for it. She cared about him, but she just couldn't go for it. It didn't work out. So at some point, Owen went through a traumatic situation where he had to end up killing someone that was close to him and his brother in arms during a fight, a raid, or whatever. And it wasn't until Owen had to go through something so horrifying that he understood the depth of grief and the depth of betrayal, and just the depth of just that pain and loss. And it wasn't until he felt the same loss that Abby did that he was able to actually connect with her in her world, and she was able to connect with him. Once the two of them went through something so horrifying, then that is what helped them to actually connect with each other. And that's what brought on a true intimate bond between the two characters. And once the intimate bond was explored and it was released, then that's when Abby started getting, the visions about the children and all that stuff. I'm not going to get into, whatever. But that is a perfect example that, even with Dexter and Lumen, it wasn't the fact that they were happy, that they were so happy that they can have intimacy and bond together and have, good intimate relationship. It was the fact that they experienced each other's darkness and pain together. And all of that is what helped them find the deeper truth of who they were and to help explore each other's deeper truths. And it's what created the true beautiful intimacy between them. It was about, you're in my world, I'm in your world. We are in our we're in this world together. We're in our world that we've created. Yeah, intimacy it's not always about light. It's about truth and depth and darkness and pain and connecting with it and then creating something beautiful after going through all of that together. Episode 12, the final episode. I skipped 11. 11 didn't have any. History has to repeat itself to heal. Yes, this happened in The Last of Us 2, and it happened in Avengers, actually. I can't think of any other examples right now, but a lot of times, oh, yeah, Dexter, almost 100% of the time, when we go through trauma, we're stuck in a loop or whatever, but um, history will have to repeat itself Once it gets to a certain point, a different decision has to be made. And that actually helps take you out of that circular loop. It takes you out of that cycle. In order to heal, you do have to be put into the position or circumstances or energetically be put in the same situation that you were originally in that broke you in the first place. Strangely, whenever we go through something traumatizing, especially with another person, our energy will actually signal certain individuals to show up and constantly recreate trauma that we've been through. And we'll attract partners, we'll be attracted to partners, we'll be attracted to situations, we'll be attracted to jobs, we'll be attracted to certain circumstances that are constantly, repetitively breaking us down, destroying us, hurting us constantly. And we say, or we think, oh, every job is like this, every woman is like this, every man is like this, every life is like this, everything in life is the same. Every friend is like this, and we'll find ourselves attracting these same people, attracting these same cycles and circles over and over again because history basically has to repeat itself, but the outcome has to be different. So that one pivotal points where things kind of got out of hand, or that has to be changed. That's when a different decision has to be made, and that creates a form of healing too through PTSD, letting history repeat itself, and then doing a different, creating a different outcome. I think that happened. Yeah. Anyway, the next note, Dexter. Oh, okay. Yes, Dexter's darkness versus Lumen's darkness. Oof. Okay, so Dexter's darkness. Um. Yeah, stays with him, whereas Lumen's darkness leaves. Her cycle was finished. Her cycle was done. What she needed for herself was done. And that does kind of go into child versus adult trauma, which can be when something traumatic happens when you're an adult. You can just get revenge, or I probably shouldn't have said that, but you can probably, fortunately, I can't cut that out. I'm not starting this over again. You can do something like, when I say you can do something like get someone back, and it'll be like, oh, blah, 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 I'm minding my own business, and someone shows up and they yell at you, and now you're traumatized, and you're like, this person yelled at me at work the other day, and now I've been scared like the last week. And then you go up to that person and you do something bad to them to make them feel bad, and then you feel better. And I do not want to promote that kind of behavior at all, but sometimes you feel that way. You put yourself in a situation where you feel like, okay, this person made me feel small, they feel small now, and now I felt like I reclaimed a sense of my power back after doing, getting back at this person for what they did to me and how they made me feel. Sometimes that person doesn't do it on purpose, it's an accident. But when we're talking about PTSD and trauma and healing, I do have to say some things that may not sound very favorable or right, you know what I mean? So that's the difference versus, adult trauma can happen, and you can kind of work around it, work through it, do something, clear it out, then you can move on. Versus when you have a Dexter's darkness, it just develops into you, just develops with you, and it just becomes a normal. It becomes less of a trauma. If trauma happens at the top, in the surface level, then it, the longer you sit with it, the more it sinks down into you. The deeper it gets, the more, the more it sits, the deeper it gets. Also, in accordance to that, um, yeah, nature versus created. Some people are natural. Anyway, so yeah, that's the difference between that. And then the last note, technically the last note that I wrote, I actually have three more at the bottom from Jordan Chase's his mixtapes. The last note I wrote for Dexter season 5, last note was when healed. Yeah, when healed, where does your soul go? And what does it look like? Maybe picture that in your head. When you've gone through everything you've gone through, when you are better, when you have healed from your darkness, when you have healed from all your pain, then what does life actually look like on the other side? When you think about your daily routines, what you would do if you were healed, how would you treat yourself? How would you treat others around you? If you were completely healed, you didn't have that anchor of darkness with you, what would life look like? That's what you need to focus on when trying to recreate a better future for yourself. Look at what life will feel like, could be like for your senses when you're all healed. So now, I guess closing out, um, Lumen, Lumen leaving versus staying. Lumen kind of had to leave because now that her darkness was gone, Dexter was like, "Oh, I'll be here," and Lumen's like, "Yeah, I don't need to do it. My darkness is gone. It's not there anymore." Lumen had to move on because she no longer resonated with that life, that lifestyle. She was there for a time that she needed to be there. Dexter and Lumen fully opened themselves up to the situation and to each other. But by the end of it, Lumen was able to move on from that thing that bonded them together. So now that that darkness wasn't there, now that that shadow wasn't there bounding them together, now that healing was made, well, now they're done with their journey. They're done with the journey, and the art of healing is to let go. You know, Dexter had to move on to something else, and Lumen had to move on to something else. And Dexter was reminded of why he did what he did, so that people could live and people didn't have to go through such horrifying things. It was actually quite a good, beautiful situation, bittersweet, but it was necessary for Lumen to leave. And Lumen couldn't live a normal life if she was constantly involved with another, killer. She had to live. And that was ultimately Lumen's character, which was about renewal and going from darkness and to heal. And this the process of healing is what what Lumen was sent to Dexter for. So yeah, Lumen had to leave, and Lumen being alive symbolizes in Dexter that there is still hope or a chance for him to be renewed from his darkness, that he can still escape his darkness and live a normal life. That's what Lumen's character represented for Dexter in Dexter's mind. That's why she had to live. That's why she had to leave, to still keep hope alive in Dexter that this dark passenger can be eliminated, taken away. And Jordan Chase was more of the anger. Anyway, the three tapes that I got from Jordan Chase, you gotta know what it is you want before you take it. You gotta figure out what it is in life that you actually want before you pursue it. We are our own worst enemy. A lot of the battles that we face are internal. We just gotta find the strength in ourselves to fight ourselves, and the best way to beat yourself in a battle, in a fight, is to use intuition. And the world does not. What? Oh, the world does not put limitations on what you can have, and it doesn't. It doesn't. Life doesn't put limitations on what you can have, on what you can achieve. There is some way of doing it, no matter how hard it is, no matter what you feel you've lost. There is some opportunity. Life will can provide it for you in some way, no matter how outrageous it is. You want a house where the walls are made out of glass and it's a large fish tank. Like you could do that, you know. So you can have crazy ideas. Life will always provide opportunities for you to do the impossible or let the impossible happen. There are no limitations in life. You just gotta know how to get there, how to really exploit opportunities and get to where you want to go. And again, don't let people make you feel bad for living your own life, you know? But don't be a weenie about it. Don't be mean. Don't be a jerk about it. All right. Well, this is my recording for season 5 of Dexter. This was a rough one to get through, but I've waited almost 6 months to do this recording. I just haven't had enough time to myself to do it. I did not have time today to do it, but I got up early enough to do it before too much activity happened, luckily. So I lucked out today. Thank you for listening, and do your best in life with what you have. And thank you for listening.